Your villains are boring. Let's talk about how to fix that. One thing that people tend to be obsessed with in most stories is the villain. We all tend to love/hate them in one way or another, and for good reason. Voldemort, Darth Vader, Moriarty, the list just keeps going on. We'll break down on how to make your villains interesting into 3 categories. The first, hero-villain relationships. The second, morals. And the third, flavor. Villain-hero relationships are essentially that. How do your heroes and villains interact with each other and know each other? A villain isn't interesting if they aren't somehow tied to the heroes in the story. For instance, Ra's al Ghul and Batman, they were a mentor-student relationship. For Harry Potter, Voldemort was the destroyer of his family and his previous life. Harry grew up knowing that this man was going to destroy everything he loved and held dear if he didn't stop him. For Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty was his equal, his rival in every sense of the word. These relationship dynamics are something that I call parallels. Parallels connect your hero and villain together. One parallel example is Hamilton and Burr's lives, constantly intertwined, intersecting based on their similar desires for gain, be it through politics, occupation, money, and all manner of power. They were always intersecting in their goals and aspirations till eventually they came to a conflict. This was a perfect parallel of their lives. Another parallel would be Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, father and son, both strong force wielders, and both tempted by the evil Emperor Palpatine. One gave in to the temptation and his lust for power and to protect his wife, whereas the other literally rebelled against the temptation and fought the Emperor with his every being. Making this parallel will make things much more meaningful to the characters, but more importantly to your audience as well, because they see this hero-villain relationship. It creates something unique that not only the characters will come to know, but the audience will appreciate and understand. By the end of each and every one of my D&D campaigns, my players have been obsessed with destroying the villain by the end. Almost everyone has some sort of moral compass, what they are willing and not willing to do to reach their goal. The only people that don't have any sort of moral compass would be people who are insane or crazy, and these kinds of villains tend to be really boring. Hear me out. Joker was a crazy villain, but he was also interesting. But this wasn't because he was just insane. There was much more to him than that. He in fact did have a moral compass of how he viewed people to some degree. He viewed everyone as evil, and given the right selfish opportunity to present itself, would show it to everyone around them. Joker showed this when he retrofitted 2 different ships with bombs set to go off and giving the detonator to each other, one filled with civilians, the other filled with criminals, letting them know that if neither detonated the other's ship within a certain allotted time, they both would be destroyed by Joker's detonation. His view, in this case, was going to cause that one of them would destroy the other before the time was up. He viewed them all as evil, and inevitably it was just a question of which evil, like the bomb, would go off first. In this case, to his utter surprise, neither went off, and he was forced to try to detonate it before Batman stopped him. This moral compass of what's right and what's wrong, what is acceptable and what is not, and for why, will help refine your villain and make them a lot more interesting. Some villains have a limit to what they're willing to do. Other villains view their ends as perfectly justifying the means, that they're willing to do whatever it takes to reach that end, like Thanos. Then there are other villains who delight in evil, such as Nova from Alita Battle Angel. His words were, quote, "I've found the only way to enjoy immortality is to watch others die." A bone-chilling line, and in one sentence declares his motives. Give your villains a reason to do what they do, maybe even a limit to what they're willing to do if you want to make them less monstrous. This will help them become a lot more interesting and defined. Every amazing villain has some sort of flavor they tend to stick to. Emperor Palpatine was a tempter and a tyrant. Moriarty was an intellectual and a strategist. Davy Jones was a deal maker and a heartbroken. Villains who can easily be recognized by how they act almost always follow some sort of pattern that they make their choices and actions around. Part of this is tied to your villain's past. For Davy Jones, it was his deal with Calypso. For Palpatine, it was his lust for power and legacy. For Thanos, it was his desire for order and, ironically, universal preservation. Be sure to make the background of said flavor make sense. You don't want to pull a Thanos situation where instead of snapping half of the population into oblivion, he could have easily just doubled all resources. Keep it simple if you can. You'll have less opportunity for plot holes that way. To decide the theme of your villain, also keep in mind the theme of the story. For instance, in Curse of Strahd is a horror theme, and Strahd is a vampire. Though despite him being a vampire, it's not vampirism that makes him so terrifying. It's more of his strategic maneuvering, his ability to outwit the heroes at every turn, to make things happen the way he desires them to happen. That is the truly terrifying part about Strahd. To summarize, start by creating a relationship between your heroes and villain, something that will work off of each other and give them a reason to be pitted against each other. Give your villains some sort of moral compass and worldview, something that will define how they see people and how they view their own actions. What they do and why makes complete sense to them. Give your villain a theme or flavor that they tend to stick to. Something that's recognizable and interesting, that is usually defined by their background. Make sure to keep it simple and also make sure it actually makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.